Thank you, Chairman Rogers, Ranking Member Meng, Chairman Cole, Ranking Member DeLauro. And thank you, Mr. Patel, for your testimony and for being here today. I've been looking at the President's 120-word FBI budget request, the so-called skinny, I'll call it Ozempic request, that states that, quote, the undoing of the weaponization of the FBI is one of the administration's top priorities. The weaponization of the FBI that is something that deeply concerns me. It should concern all of us. And yet, since taking office, President Trump has been on a revenge tour. He has targeted individuals, universities, law firms, with executive orders to cut them out or to make them come under his will. He has used ICE to disappear U.S. citizens without due process, and he's fully ignored a unanimous Supreme Court order, and then over the weekend wasn't sure if he was obligated to uphold the Constitution of the United States. In your book, your recent book, Government Gangsters, you include an appendix with a list of names that people have referred to as an enemies list. Now, I know you will claim it's just an appendix, not an enemies list. So let's focus on how the president sees it, on what the president calls it. And you proudly display his quote on the front cover of your book. The president calls this a brilliant roadmap, a blueprint. And I have not even raised your storied children's book, The Plot Against the King. It concerns me how many people from this blueprint have been targeted with executive orders and FBI investigations. The FBI cannot be weaponized, and under your leadership, it has been nothing but a weapon alongside the president to go after the president's perceived opponents, to stifle dissent and free speech. A few weeks ago, as we saw through a social media post that you quickly deleted, the FBI arrested a judge in Wisconsin for correctly asking ICE officials if they had a judicial warrant instead of an administrative warrant, which they did not have. Despite this judge following the law, on the morning of April the 25th, the FBI arrested the judge in an escalation of the weaponization of the FBI under your leadership. Let me be clear. A functioning democracy does not lock up judges. I am gravely concerned about the utter lack of independence of the FBI and its weaponization under your leadership. I am concerned that the president is using this book, your book, as a blueprint, as he has said. It's a blueprint for revenge. And I am concerned that your eagerness, a childlike giddiness to carry out the president's revenge tour, you've shown yourself to be unserious in your statements before you were sworn in and some after. You've shown yourself unfit to lead this important agency. I was an impeachment manager for President Trump's second impeachment. It was a sad, solemn duty. And so I wanted to ask you about that. Mr. Patel, as you and the president continue to weaponize and investigate his perceived enemies, as you follow this blueprint, when can I, a former impeachment manager, expect the FBI at my door?
Ma'am, you want to know who was targeted by a weaponized FBI? Me. You want to know how and why?
Well,
you want to know what I'm doing to fix it?
That. Let me move on.
Well, you should read the book because there's no enemies
So-
list on that book.
so
There are
you-
people that violated their constitutional obligations and their duties to the American people.
That's good. You
And they
gave
were
them due
rightly
process.
called out.
I'm
And
changing
you should
topics.
give that book to every one of your constituents so they can
changing
read
topics.
about it.
I won't be doing that.
That's their loss.
During your Senate confirmation hearings, you repeatedly denied having any involvement as a private citizen in the firing of FBI officials who engaged in the prosecution against January 6 insurrectionists, the violent rioters who beat and killed Capitol police officers, and whom you referred to as political prisoners. Since then, multiple whistleblowers have come forward, and we know that you likely committed perjury. At the same hearing, you claimed you were not familiar with Stu Peters, an anti-Semitic Holocaust denier, despite the fact that you appeared on Mr. Peters' podcast 8 separate times. 8 times, and you claimed not to recall. Mr. Patel, my second question is, should we worry more about your memory or your veracity?
We should worry more about your lack of candor. You're accusing me of committing
Veracity?
perjury. Tell the American
You didn't
people how
tell-
I broke the law and committed a felony.
You did
Have the
bring-
audacity to actually
So,
put the
all
facts
right, then the
forward
answer is
instead of
both.
lying for political banter so you can have a 20-second
answer
donation hit.
The answer is both. I believe that the
The
men and
answer is
women of
you're
the,
failing,
Excuse me,
not
I
me.
reclaim my time.
Go ahead.
Mr. Patel, I believe that the members of the FBI, and I know many of them, many retired, 38,000 people, as you say, it's a little less than that now, deserve the very best, deserve extraordinary independence, deserve freedom from the fears of being investigated, the freedom of coming forward to make sure they're doing their job. And I'll end with this, that I think it's interesting that in your proposal today, you find yourself at a gulf of difference between you and the president. I wonder how you will resolve that. Will you go to the president and say, we need $11.2 billion, not what you cut out of here? You're asking for more than $1 billion than the president's request. Are you going to go to the president and straighten out that gulf?
I'll do what I've always done and represent the American people, defend this country, and make sure the Constitution is always upheld and the FBI is never weaponized. Maybe you should do the same.
So you agree with the president when he says he doesn't know if he should uphold his constitutional duty?
If you want to just keep putting words in my mouth, the TV cameras are outside.
I thank you. I yield back. Again, this is an unserious moment, sadly, for the FBI. I yield back.
More so for you.
Mr. Strong.
The congressman opened by focusing on the Trump administration's proposed FBI budget, specifically pointing to language that described ending what it called the weaponization of the Bureau as a top priority. That phrase has become a rallying cry among President Trump's allies, who argue that federal agencies have unfairly targeted conservatives for years. But critics see the situation very differently, and that's exactly where this exchange became significant. Rather than discussing numbers and spending levels, the lawmaker argued that the real concern is not what happened before, but what is happening right now. He accused President Trump of using government power to target political opponents, universities, law firms, and other institutions that have challenged his administration. Those are serious allegations, and they reflect a growing concern among some lawmakers that government authority could be used to punish dissent rather than enforce the law impartially. For viewers trying to understand why this matters, it's important to remember that the FBI occupies a unique position in American government. The Bureau has extraordinary investigative powers. It can conduct investigations, gather intelligence, execute search warrants, and work closely with federal prosecutors. Because of those powers, every FBI director faces the same challenge, convincing the public that the Bureau operates independently from politics. That's why Kash Patel's leadership has generated so much attention. Before becoming FBI director, Patel was already a well-known figure in Trump's political orbit. He gained prominence during investigations into the Trump presidency and later became one of the former president's most vocal defenders. Supporters view him as someone willing to challenge entrenched government institutions. Critics worry that his close alignment with Trump could blur the line between law enforcement and politics. The congressman then raised another issue that has followed Patel for years, his book, Government Gangsters. In that book, Patel included a list of individuals he argued played major roles in what he viewed as government misconduct. Critics have frequently described the list as an enemies list, while Patel has rejected that characterization. However, the issue continues to generate controversy because some of the people mentioned in the book have later found themselves under scrutiny from the Trump administration. This raises a broader question that extends far beyond one book or one hearing. How should Americans distinguish between legitimate accountability and political retaliation? That's a question lawmakers from both parties continue to wrestle with. If you're finding this breakdown helpful, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. We follow these hearings closely and provide the context behind the headlines so you can understand what's really happening in Washington. The discussion then shifted toward immigration enforcement and the role of federal authorities. The lawmaker referenced the arrest of a Wisconsin judge, a case that sparked national debate about the relationship between immigration enforcement officers and the judicial system. Supporters of the arrest argued that no public official is above the law and that interference with federal enforcement actions should be investigated. Critics countered that judges must be able to perform their duties without fear of political pressure, and warned that such arrests could have a chilling effect on judicial independence. What makes this issue particularly complicated is that it touches on several competing principles at once. Federal authorities have a responsibility to enforce immigration laws. At the same time, courts are expected to operate independently and provide due process protections. When those responsibilities appear to collide, political tensions rise quickly. This exchange also highlights a larger trend that has defined Washington in recent years. Increasingly, political battles are no longer centered solely on policy disagreements. Instead, many of the biggest disputes involve the institutions themselves: the FBI, the Department of Justice, the courts, intelligence agencies, and the broader federal government. Each side argues that it is defending democracy. Each side accuses the other of abusing power. And as these accusations intensify, public trust in institutions continues to face significant challenges. For ordinary Americans watching from home, the stakes are substantial. The outcome of these debates could shape how federal agencies operate, how investigations are conducted, and how future administrations exercise executive power. Questions about due process, judicial independence, free speech, and government accountability are not abstract political talking points. They influence how the American system functions every day. If you enjoy this in-depth analysis, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We break down major hearings and political developments in a way that helps you go beyond the sound bites and understand the bigger picture. As the hearing continued, one thing became clear. This was never just a conversation about the FBI budget. It was a battle over competing visions of government power, accountability, and the role of federal institutions in a deeply divided political era. And judging by the intensity of today's exchange, that debate is far from over.